Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting for the Miami Lakes Planning and Zoning Board to order. It is June 7th at 6:30 p.m. Thank you all for attending. I'd like, please, if we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. At this time, I would like to confirm that everyone has had the opportunity to review the minutes from March 1st, which are attached.
I reviewed them, and I'd like to make a motion to approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And if we can go, please, then to the minutes for May 3rd, 2022, which was our workshop on the signage. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Make a motion to approve them.
And a second, please.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to postpone the election of chair and vice chair to the upcoming July meeting. Do I have a second?
Yes, you do. Raul.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. At this point in time, I'd like to open up the meeting to public comments. This would be your opportunity to approach the podium to share your thoughts. If there's anyone here that would like to speak on public comments. Do we have anyone virtual?
No, there's nobody virtually.
At this point in time, public comments are closed. Thank you. And we're going to move on to the first item. Which is our quasi-judicial hearing, presented please first by Mr. Cobiella.
Thank you, Chair. Lorenzo Cobiella, Deputy Town Attorney for Miami Lakes. I'd like to read this into the record. Please be advised that the following items on the board's agenda are quasi-judicial in nature. An opportunity for persons to speak on each item will be made available after the applicant and the staff have made their presentation on each item. All testimony, including public testimony and evidence, will be made under oath or affirmation. Additionally, each person who gives testimony may be subject to cross-examination. If you do not wish to be either cross-examined or sworn, your testimony will be given its due weight. The general public will not be permitted to cross-examine witnesses, but the public may request the board to ask questions of staff or witnesses on their behalf. Persons representing organizations must present evidence of their authority to speak on behalf of that organization. Any person presenting documents to the board should provide the town clerk with a minimum of 10 copies. Further details of the quasi-judicial procedure may be obtained from the clerk. At this time, Chair, I think it would be proper for anybody who has not provided their ex parte disclosure to make their ex parte disclosure on the record.
If there's anyone present or virtual that has not, at this point in time, declared their non-ex parte.
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
I have nothing either.
Thank you.
Chair, the item that is before you is variance 2021. It's hearing number VARH 2021-0032. The applicant is 8818 Northwest 169th LLC. The location of this address is 8818 Northwest 169th Terrace, Miami Lakes, Florida 33018. The way that the procedure in our Code of Ordinances reads is that the first step is for all those that will be providing testimony to be sworn, and then after that, the town, Ms. Alonso will give her presentation. After Ms. Alonso gives her presentation, then we can hear from the applicant, and after we hear from the applicant, we can hear from the public. At this time, I think your chair would be proper to swear all those folks in.
Would anyone who's in my audience or present that is going to be testifying on this matter please stand and be sworn in?
Do you swear to say the truth and only the truth, so help you God? You may be seated.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman, Chairperson, and board members. This is an item that you have we begun to hear previously. It came to you a couple of months ago, and there was no sufficient ownership at the time, so the board never heard the item. It is coming to you then for the first time, in the sense that this is the first time that we have the owner present. The owner is requesting a variance to allow an existing accessory building that was built without permit, with a 2.3 foot side setback on the rear yard where they need 5 feet. The applicant is requesting an after-effect approval. Is a 50 square foot accessory building that contains a bathroom and is located within the required rear yard of an existing 1,799 square foot single-family home at 8818 Northwest 169th Terrace. Staff is recommending denial as this application does not meet the conditions for practical difficulty required by the code, and I hereby enter the staff report in its entirety as part of the record. And I'm going to allow the applicant to speak for himself if you'd like to. Would you like to come up, sir?
Good evening. Please be sure your microphone is on. You're being recorded. Thank you.
Hi. I went into contract on the property. Could you hear me?
I'm sorry, I'm being reminded to please state your name and
Oh,
address for the record.
David Kesserman.
Thank you.
I went into contract on the property.
I'm sorry, can you please put your address on the record? I'm sorry. Your
Oh.
address.
My home address
Yes.
is 16100 Northwest 83rd Place, Miami Lakes 33016.
Thank you.
When I went into contract on the property, the structure was existing and I was not aware of any existing issues or violations on the property. Only after coming into the township and just making sure everything was okay was when this matter came up that there was existing issue. We had to go back and forth with the seller, and I agreed to go forward and try to get the approval, and if so, the contract will be fulfilled in full. So, for my best interest, I don't want to deal with the headache of destroying it. It is a nice structure. Does make the property more valuable and better. I am hoping that it does get approved.
Is there anything else you wanted to add?
I don't have any evidence. I just purchased the property. I don't know any previous history at all about the property. So I don't have any additional evidence on hand.
Thank you very much. At this point in time, does the board have any questions of the applicant? I do. You mentioned that you purchased this property and you were not aware of the violations.
Correct.
So I'm a real estate agent, and I do know that in normal real estate transaction, there's title work done, there's a lien search done, and so you were not aware of any
It
of
didn't
that?
come up on title.
And it didn't come up in the lien search?
Correct, because there was no active violation, because it was in the process of being, taken care of. That's what happened. It didn't come up on title, and then we had to bring up the issue, because there was some other violations that came up on title that did not have to do with the structure, had to do with the side of the property or something like that. And when I came into the town about that, they gave me a whole report of everything on the property, and when I was reading it through, the structure issue came up.
You have questions of the,
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Certainly.
Sir, there's a gazebo in the corner that says here in the drawing to be removed. That was removed?
The gazebo,
Yeah, there's a in the drawings here that shows, and it says, existing pergola to be demolished.
the pergola was still there. That, they approved that at closing.
The pergola
That
is-
violation was, the violation of the pergola was taken care of at closing, before closing. Now, I think it had to, I don't know all the details, but I think it had to do, there was no roof on the pergola. They made them take off the roof of the pergola. But,
Yeah, because I just see on the drawing here, it says existing pergola to be removed on the drawing that I'm looking at, but then I see it's still here on the drawings.
Which one is that, the SP one?
I see it on, drawing SP1. On SP1 on the site
On
plan.
the
it
bottom
should-
left-hand corner?
Yep. Yeah, if you look at it, you have to look at it real close. It says existing pergola to be removed,
But I mean,
demolished.
then it doesn't show on the rendered, on page 18.
Page 18.
Right, but the pergola doesn't show. So which is,
Yeah, I think it does show, doesn't it? I can't tell.
there were some violations that were on before the closing that the town said were taken care of and approved it, so there was no issue. And the only thing that we brought back up was the structure for the bathroom.
how far is the structure of the bathroom from the house?
I didn't measure it. I don't know the exact details. But I know the structure is is close to the neighbor's property line.
2 feet to the neighbor's line.
It's close to the neighbor's line, but Susana, they also have to be 10 feet away from the main house, right?
I believe it's about 6 feet.
It's about
Yeah,
6
that-
feet?
It should be 5
So
feet.
they
Correct.
have two
Got
encroachments.
way too close.
Yes, sir.
No, not from the house, not the
Through the chair.
property line.
Susana, is it possible that, because I'm just trying to get the order in which this happened, this gentleman
That's what I
was
was
in
looking for.
contract, is it possible that if a permit was attempted to be pulled, that a violation may not have come up during that process, and that therefore he wasn't aware of it? Could that be a possibility?
Sure, I don't really know how title searches get done and performed,
Well,
The issue is
but
that
yes, it's possible that,
if there's a code, sorry for
go ahead, yeah.
usually when you're doing a lien search, in order for the violation to show up, the violation had to have, the citation had to have occurred, then it had to have not been cured, and then the town issued an order that then attached to the property that was recorded. So it was a recordable citation. So if he was in the process, he had filed a permit, and he had done the work, let's say, without a permit, so he was given initial citation, he went ahead and got the permit, he was in the permitting process, and he was trying to get this as variance application, it might not have shown at that point.
Are there any other questions of the applicant?
I do have a question.
Please proceed.
I just want to know exactly when it is that you became aware of the issue. So was it before or after you already purchased the property? Did you become aware of this in your, back and forth deciding whether or not to purchase it? Or did you find out only after you had already purchased the property?
I was still in contract and came up on the lien search other violations. Then I came in, I was already after my inspection period and things like that. And I came in to find out what the other violations were, and they printed me out the whole report. And when I read through it, it came up this thing, and I met with the town, and they explained to me that because it's not active, it didn't show up. And then I hired an attorney to represent me because I wanted to back out of the contract. And he said it's not so simple, it's going to be a fight, and the other side hired an attorney as well, and it turned into a bad situation. So we left some money in escrow, and I don't want to deal with the mess of knocking this down.
Do you have any letters from the neighbors in support of this being there or anything?
I don't have personally any letters. I know the previous owner said that all the neighbors he has letters from, but I don't have those letters.
So you don't have any letters from your adjoining neighbor
Correct.
where the bathroom is next to it that to support you having it?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
The prior individual who came before us, that was I guess the person you were purchasing the house from, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and this business entity who the home is under, you are the registered agent for that business, right?
Correct.
At this point in time, are there any other questions of the applicant? You can be seated, thank you.
Thank you.
If I can, Ms. Alonso, regarding the structure and the proximity to the property line, this impacts the drainage from that side of the property?
Can you repeat your question, please? Can you repeat your question?
Right, so if the structure in question is in close proximity to the property line and there's a roof line on this building, the water runoff goes,
To the neighbor. It's only 2 feet, so it's basically going to be dripping into a very skinny space, most likely splashing into the neighbor's property.
and we don't have any documentation. Obviously, anything that might have been of documentation before does not apply to this hearing, am I correct?
What do you mean by that?
Any supporting documents from the neighbors stating that they're okay with the building, there's nothing?
No letter was ever submitted from the adjacent neighbor in support.
If I may, Susanna, I recall the gentleman who came before us on this before, and he came with a packet of paper, and he said he had all this support and all this documentation. And I believe, and my memory may serve me incorrectly, but at that time there were certain documents submitted into the record. Would that be considered a separate record?
It would. At that point in time, during the last hearing, I believe we did not, there was no continuance. It was basically that case, well, I take that back. The case was continued to allow for the proper owner to come before us. So yes, that could be taken into consideration because that is part of the record.
Right, that's what I thought, because he had a lot of information, but our issue with him was he wasn't the owner, and they were in this situation where they were transferring from him as the seller, and this individual is now the buyer. That seems to found himself in a situation that was created by the prior owner.
Well, during the prior hearing, board member, if memory serves me right, there was some due diligence that we did on our part
Right.
and we were able to discover that there had been a transfer of the property. At the time, the person who was purporting to be the owner was discovered was not the owner. And that's why we did not allow that person to introduce any evidence to support the application, because they couldn't move forward with the application. They had no standing to do so. I'm sorry, Chair. If he wishes to make comments, he can do so during the public comment
In order
period.
for you to comment, you would have to be sworn in. And is it,
You're-
Chris?
Chairwoman, he doesn't have to be sworn in. His testimony will be given in Stu Wade if he doesn't swear in. But at the juncture that we are right now is you're asking questions of the applicant and you're having discussions among yourselves. He will have an opportunity afterwards if he wishes to make some comments.
if you would just wait, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Any more questions
Yes,
of the applicant?
Susana, the encroachment is to the overhang or to the structure itself?
No, the encroachment is to the wall of the structure. So
the
from the
structure.
wall of the structure to the property line 2.6, yes, there is an additional encroachment of the roof line, but that's within the regular 1 foot additional encroachment that a regular roof line makes. So it's within the regular drop that a regular roof line would make, so that's why it's not an additional variance.
Okay, but
Okay.
in
But yes,
reference,
the roof line is closer to the property line even than,
but in reference to where the water would go, the
Right.
point that
Correct.
the chair made, it's even though it's not that much, it's
it's a lot, yeah,
it's a lot.
right. You're literally dripping water on the property line, if not beyond it, because there's such a small space, really. It's really the size of this counter. So if
I
you
mean,
split, yes,
It's a small structure, but it's also
Right.
a small space.
right.
Would the applicant please approach? I do have another question for you. I'm sorry, need a clarification. The structure is 100% completed. It's finished, am I right?
100% completed.
Can you please explain to us what isn't completed?
No, it's all completed.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
It's 100% completed. It's a bathroom, outdoor bathroom,
So it's finished, complete?
100% finished.
Okay.
So I saw everything finished. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. Marble, beautiful, done beautiful. But I didn't even dream that there was an issue.
Okay, okay, thank you so much. Are there any other questions of the board, either of the applicant or of Ms. Alonso or Mr. Cobiella at this point? And if we can have you approach. Thank you.
So we are the.
Do you wish to be
property
sworn in,
owner.
by the way? Do you wish to be sworn in?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you swear to say the truth and only the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Go ahead.
And please state your name and address for the
My
record.
name is Ulises Ruiz. That's my wife, Ana Ruiz. So when
And
we
your
bought,
address, please?
it's 8818 Northwest 169 Terrace, Miami Lakes, 33018. That's the property in question.
Is that your address?
No, ma'am.
Would you state your address for
Yes,
the record, please?
2901 Southwest 98th Avenue, Miami, 33165.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Okay, so my wife and I bought that property back in March of 2018, the same condition and with the same cabana bath in question. We did nothing. And one of the reasons why we bought the property, by the way, when we did a title search, nothing came out as illegal. So my mom passed away back in December 2019, but one of the reasons why we bought the house and we fell in love with it was for the cabana bath, because my mom was, she passed away at 91, but she could barely walk, so we wanted to have her outside. If she needed to use the bathroom, we can walk her to the bathroom, et cetera, et cetera. So that was one of the reasons why we fell in love with this property, aside from all the things that the property had, and in a great area as well. Fast forward, when COVID hit in 2020, we got a violation for multiple things. Cabana bath, both fence, since we have a pool, both fence had like a 2-inch gap and kids can climb through the fence. We got a violation for that. And also for having a gazebo. Fast forward, I worked with building department to try to work all those things out. And I demolished the gazebo in question. I'm sorry, the gazebo in question, and built a pergola. And all that was done with permits, including the fence. So the only thing that was left behind was the bathroom in question, the cabana bath. And one of the reasons why that was left behind was because we needed to apply for a variance in order to proceed with all the permits. In regards to the bathroom, which I know very well, the whole structure, it is sitting about 2.5 feet from the fence. And by the way, I do have all my neighbors' letters stating that they didn't have a problem with the cabana bath in questions, which I provided them to Mr. Kesselman. I don't know if you have them or your brother does have them or your attorney. But those letters are all signed by all the neighbors in the surrounding the property. So the cabana bath in question, if you can look at the survey, it is sitting about 2.5 feet from the fence. It does have, and by the way, the cabana bath is the same as the structure. So it's not, having a cabana bath is not changing the whole structure of the neighborhood. The tiles, the roof tiles are the same as the property, as the subject property. It's painted the same color, so it's not changing the whole structure or the neighborhood surrounding areas, by the way. What else can I? Okay, so if you look at the survey, you can see that the setback is about 2.5 feet. There are multiple surveys. I had to get like 2 surveys because the first survey that I did was not approved by the city, so had to get another one with the elevation for Durham. By the way, Durham already approved the cabana bath. They already approved, because since there is water coming in and out, they had to approve how much water was going to be consumed and all that. So that was all approved by Durham, and it's also recorded with. I believe it has a gutter on the east side of the bathroom. So if it does rain, even without a gutter, water will not go into the neighbor's property, because again, we're sitting about 2.5 feet from the fence. And again, the letters from my neighbors, including Maria, who happens to be the neighbor with the cabana bath, it's sitting on the fence. Her letter is there, which by the way, the last time we came here, all those documents were left here. And I don't know what happened to all those documents, but they were left here. And I guess that's all I can contribute into the, for you guys to please, consider it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, what documents are you talking about?
When my wife and I came here for the hearing, we had just sold the property. And since we had sold the property, we couldn't, and I don't know if you guys remember, we couldn't proceed with the variance. But I brought all the documents, letters and everything, and they were passed. I brought 10 copies of each, and they were left here. Who kept them? I don't know. What they did with them, I don't know. However, I do have copies of all those documents, and I also provided them to Mr. Kesselman's attorney. When we
I
were
remember
exchanging.
some of those documents, and we did take issue with some of those documents, in terms of signature, and we did review them at that time. I know the documents you're referring to, but I think the board did take issue with some of those documents, but we did review them.
And there
But
were
thank you for
about
reminding
6 or
us.
7 letters, I'm sorry to interrupt you, about 6 or 7 letters from my surrounding neighbors approving the variance. They didn't have any issues, especially my next door neighbor, Maria, who I still have a great relationship with her, and she was like, Ulysses, I love your bathroom there. It doesn't bother me at all. But again, I hope you guys again can consider it and allow for it to be approved, especially for his parents. They're old as mine, and I know what it is to have old parents. You know, you walk them through the inside of the house, wet floors from the pool, they can fall. And he has old parents just like me. Mine, unfortunately, my mom passed away, but my dad is still alive.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? You may be seated. Thank you. Discussion?
Well, I mean, I don't recall being in this, in the meeting where the gentleman introduced those documents.
Yeah, through the chair, I recall everything. Yeah, I recall the documents and everything.
Well, then we should have them. I mean, we were
Well,
asking previously that if he
They're not
shows,
submitted, so they're not for us
those
to see now.
letters.
They're not submitted, so they're not for us to see.
Right.
There's a different case now, it's not his. So they're not
Oh.
submitted, they're not part of the record.
Okay. I mean, even
Go ahead.
though if that neighbor, if the encroachment is acceptable to them, I really feel uncomfortable with that structure being so close to the property. And, you know, that's very,
Chair,
very close.
if I can address, so what happened the last time that we had the meeting, that we had this hearing, rather, there was issues with regards to this gentleman's testimony, in the sense that he came to, before this body, purporting to be the owner of the property. It was discovered through questioning that he was not the owner of the property. Therefore, he had no standing to proceed. Some of those documents were reviewed. You did take a look at them, but you weren't able to give it consideration, or its due consideration at that time, because you couldn't move forward with the application. The applicant wasn't here. He couldn't move forward with an application on a property he didn't own anymore. And so we continued, and now the rightful owner of the property is here before you. He's testified under oath. If you want to take his oath as believable, and you believe that you have the right to do so. He's done so again under oath. Some of you do remember the documents, but unfortunately, our clerk does not have those documents. I don't remember us ever taking those documents in and recording them. If we would have done so, we would have done so on the record. So the truth of the matter is we don't have that document for you to see today. But that is what's happened in the case, and that is why those documents were never really accepted into the record, because we didn't move forward with the actual hearing. We continued it so that we could have the true applicant. He is a true applicant, so let me take that back. The true owner to move forward with the hearing.
Well, if he stated that he has copies of those documents, can we accept those documents even though he's not the owner of the property anymore?
You may do so. You can take any evidence that's presented to you. You can take any testimony that's presented to you. Your job here is to take a look at all the evidence that's before you, and based on what is competent substantive evidence, make your decision today.
Through the chair, he would have to supply those documents for everybody? And
The rules are that you should provide at least 10 copies of whatever documents you're going to submit,
Right.
and submit them as evidence. We don't have them today as evidence. What you have, though, is his testimony, and you can give that its due weight.
Through the chair. May I ask the applicant, Mr. Kesselman, a question?
Please
you'd
approach.
have to open it again.
Beg your pardon?
I make a motion to open the,
Okay, and
the hearing
I'll
again.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Mr. Kesselman, is it your intent to live in the property with your elderly parents?
I don't live in the property. I live I live at the address I stated.
Okay.
It was a property that my parents, they live in New Jersey. They were going to use it as their second home.
Okay. Perfect, thank you.
to that, please. Who's occupying the residence now?
There's no one that's in the residence on a steady basis at all. It was used by friends and family.
Are there any other questions of the applicant?
Yes, did you bring anything today? I know what, I guess, the gentleman who testified earlier indicated, but did you bring anything yourself today? Because you're the rightful owner and the appropriate party to bring this forth. Did you bring anything for us to consider?
I didn't bring anything. There was a little, maybe miscommunication, as if this is whatever was prior is irrelevant. I think we're still using the previous application. There was a lot of gray area in the whole matter. He took responsibility in terms of the contract going through, that he's going, and he said that he's gonna make sure the variance goes through in the contract. That was the deal, that will close on the property, but he has to take responsibility for the variance, and then it will close. So and the sellers, I think he thought that he was still responsible, and that's what the contract said, that he's still responsible to make sure the variance gets approved, or if not, he's gonna be subject to the liability of it. So it was his liability mostly. I'm not saying for me there's still liability, but it was mostly his liability if the variance didn't get approved. Now, he wasn't the owner at that time. It was already after. They didn't, I wanted to push off the closing till afterwards, but he agreed that he's gonna take the responsibility of the variance. And then he came in and there was, confusion of the situation.
Okay, they're two very different questions, and I want clarity on this. So he agreed to take responsibility of the variance, but let's say we decide as a board that structure needs to come down. Who is gonna bear the burden of the cost, you or him?
So there's a $50,000 escrow, but all the work that has to get done and the cost of that work is on me, and the escrow, if the variance doesn't go through, is gonna come off of that. If, I can't say for sure, I'm sure he has a lawyer, and his lawyer's gonna try to fight it, no matter what. So I can't say that it's not gonna be my loss, but there is an escrow of $50,000 to cover if the variance doesn't go through and the demolition and everything involved.
And now, without getting into things that you can't divulge, but are you representing to us here now under oath that there is a contractual agreement that's already been entered into between you and this prior owner, that he will be responsible for the outcome of the variance request for this bathroom?
As long as, yes, he's responsible as long as everything was done correctly on my part to try to get the variance.
So if I may add to that, to the chair, so the remedy that you have is the burden falls on the previous owner. So the remedy is the X amount of money that you have in escrow, it would be subtracted from that the cost of demolishing the structure.
I think the escrow will be released if the variance doesn't go through, and then everything is on my responsibility.
I'm sorry, I need a little further clarification. You have $50,000 in escrow, and
Correct.
if the variance doesn't pass, does the entire $50,000 come to you
I hope so.
based on what you know? So you signed a contract understanding that there was a pending variance that, no?
The contract was signed before, and then when I came in about the other violations that came up on the title search, they gave me a full printout, and when I was reading through the printout, I saw this whole thing about the cabana bath. And that's when I went to my title and asked them, how come this didn't come up? And they told me there was a permit pulled, so there's no active violation. But at that point, I was already deep in the contract, and I couldn't back out based on I tried to back out. I sent the email to back out, and there was a back and forth, and this was the middle ground that we came to an agreement. Now, it was the seller's responsibility to make sure the variance goes through. And that's why he came in the following meeting and tried to get the variance. It was his responsibility.
Through the chair. So to correct the issue, there's $50,000 to take the bathroom out and repair the floor, and then you stay whole with the property. There's money there to resolve this issue.
Correct.
Okay,
I
that's what I'm
hope,
wondering.
I know there was, when it got pushed off, like a month or two, his lawyer tried to say that we breached it. So, lawyer's job is any little thing that could be a breach, they're gonna try to say that the money doesn't get released.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions of the applicant?
No, thank
Miriam? No? Thank you.
Nope. Thank you.
Please.
Chair, if you don't, if I may, I just want to put the board in a proper posture.
Please.
So again, you received evidence and you received information with regards to this cabana bath, its history, and its whereabouts. You've listened to the staff report. What you need to decide today is whether this variance is one that should be granted. Remember, variance is a separation from the law. We understand, and you've heard testimony with regards to this contract, but that's a private contract between them. Give it the way that you think it merits. However, it's the issue before you is a variance. Right? Now, that being said, Mr. Board Member Leoncio made a comment that he would have loved to have seen those letters. One of the tools available to you today, and I want to put that on the record, is you can ask for a continuance. If that is something that you wish to look at more evidence and take a look at to see if there's actual letters out there that exist, you can ask for a continuance. You can ask the person who testified from the public to bring you those letters, and you can review them and give it its weight. You have that before you.
No, but the reason why I wanted to see those letters is really, the next door neighbor right now doesn't have a problem with it. Well, what if tomorrow she sells the house? Then the poor new owner is going to have an eyesore right in front of his face. So that's why I also said previously that I do not feel comfortable supporting the request. I feel in favor of the recommendations of the planning department.
All right, if there aren't any other questions, and no further discussion, do I have a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion to do as the staff recommended, as per the staff's recommendation.
Let the record reflect that we have a second. Would you please call the roll?
Board Member Fernandez,
Let me just clear the motion was we are denying the application. Yes.
Board Member Leoncio,
Yes.
Board Member De La Sierra,
Yes.
Board Member Yanes,
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Marcus.
Yes,
Passes.
the motion passes. If at this point in time, thank you for your testimony and for being here today. And at this point in time, we'd like to move. Sure, if we take just a moment.
problem is, it's already decided, but if we approve one,
Thank you, Chairperson.
All right. If we can move on to the order of business pertaining to signs. Ms. Alonso, would you recap and bring us up to the minute, please?
So, I'll read the ordinance before you. Is an ordinance of the Town of Miami Lakes, Florida, amending chapter 13 of the Land Development Code, Article 9, titled Signs, providing for inclusion into the code, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, providing for inclusion into the code, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you so much. Now,
Um,
Ms. Alonso, thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. This is the item that we have been working on really hard. This board has been working on this subject for a few hearings already. This is an ordinance resulting from the workshop that was held in May. We heard you guys expressed your opinion very sufficiently on how you would like the signage concerning temporary signage to go. Staff heard commentary and very good suggestions that were emailed subsequently with very precise connotations, and this is the result. There was a lot of suggestions to follow other cities, including Coral Gables, including, I looked at what Coral Gables said and a little bit of the substance of what was discussed at the workshop itself, and I kind of combined the two a little bit, and I went with a different municipality that had all the Coral Gables things and all of the things that were said here. So I went a little bit in a different direction in the sense that the structure looks different, because I really wanted to get rid of that chart that makes it so difficult to read what it is that you have to do, and I wanted to go into a more of a paragraph format that just is a little more narrative and less, I don't know, grids, right? Less grids. And that's what you have before you. Now, that being said, the proposal at this point for the board is basically a structure and language. What I do need as staff, what staff needs right now for the board to help fill in is some of the details for suggestions to the council. And very pointedly, I spoke to the chairwoman today so that she has a list of all the particular details that we need to have particular motions about, and I'll make sure that you touch all these issues, because these are things that are in here with a specific number, but right now should be decided more granularly by the board. And I'm happy to go through them if you'd like.
And we appreciate your guidance. I think that I can say without any hesitation, this is a big project. We've spent a lot of time, and I think everybody here, given, and Miriam as well, and everybody else that isn't here, we've had robust discussion. I know that I've spent a lot of time. I know everybody here has as well. So I think that we have some specific things that we're going to be addressing, but I also want us to make sure that we have reviewed everything. In addition to those items, what things that you have, comments that you have, things that we need to discuss that might be different or that we might want to iron out and make sure that are exactly as we want them to be. So unless there's anything else, either from you, Mr. Lorenzo, at this moment, or Ms. Alonso, I'd like to open that up to conversation.
Just if I may, really quick, before you start that, I do want to point out a few things that are not going to be the same in the final version. For one, I was just discussing with my esteemed attorney that
Okay.
he would like to remove that last section with the violations, because he would like to use our existing code regarding violations, and that's just all of that text, that basically that last page is stricken out.
Which was something that
Completely,
you and I
page
had.
41, 16 of 16, that last page is completely taken out. Because in his opinion, we don't need that because our code is sufficient as to violations. So,
Okay,
Not
so
only-
that was part of what we had been discussing this afternoon.
correct. So we
Okay.
talked about that.
And not only that, but now you're, well, we're stepping on the toes of a different department, right, which is code enforcement. And they have kind of their rules and regulations that they follow under the pertinent section of the code. So I would rather us not touch that, just focus in on the actual
Content.
content.
Miriam, are you with us, that last page pertaining to, it would be
Yeah, I see it. 16 is stricken out from subsection F on.
16 of 16? Okay,
Yep.
terrific. All right, so let's get started.
As well, from another thing that you pointed out in a little while ago, is that under section 190313
Page number help?
D, right, where it says number, there shall be one temporary sign per street frontage, with the exception of election-free speech signs, as per section blah, 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 K11, which references the previous section where it discusses that you can have one per candidate, et cetera, et cetera. So the political signs are exempted from this particular number of one per property. And I wanted to point that out. I'm just going to clarify that a little further with a little more language. It's
So
on
that's
page,
14 of 16,
yes, correct,
and it would be
Correct.
letter D, correct?
correct, yes. So I'm
Can
going
you
to,
read that the way you want it, so that we know what you're referring to, at least to the best of your ability?
sure, I can read it really quick, like it would be, right? It would be, it would say D, number, there shall be a maximum of one temporary sign per street frontage, comma, with the exception of election/free speech signs as per section 13-1903K11, comma, which shall not exceed one temporary sign per residential or commercial unit.
Everybody's clear with that? Was there anything else?
Yes, one more thing. A little bit farther down, where it's under I, where it says size, all other districts, it says not to exceed 75 square feet. No, 40 square feet, which is what we have right now. There will be a discussion as to whether the 40 is a number that you want to change, but the number that we have right now is 40, and this is a typo, it's not supposed to say 75, so 40, right?
We're really happy for that clarification,
Yes.
because that's
No, yeah, it's a lot of
really,
square
really
feet.
big.
And one more clarification under section 13, under the banner section, a little farther down, it says that it requires a building permit. No, that would be a zoning permit, because the building department does, the building code does not require permits for banners. That would be a zoning permit, and it would not be issued as under the building code. And now I'm done. You may
Everyone's
proceed
clear
now.
on those items? We're going to be making motions.
And then you have the one that says 100 square feet.
Yes,
You
well,
want-
that's a discussion to be had, right? So
Okay.
there's now that I'm gonna allow the chairwoman to go through and discuss every item one at a time.
Any discussion, any comments, anything before we jump into the items that were mentioned that we want to discuss or go over?
I saw a few typos, but I told Suzanne about it, so she'll be looking through for them.
So a couple of items that I had on page 5 of 16, the time limitations of permits. Everybody's reviewed that. That would be acceptable? And the responsibility of the signs, it seemed like that was part of a discussion that we had as far as the sign installation company. So this relieves the sign company once the sign is installed. Is that correct, Susanna?
I'm a little
I
bit
am
lost. Are we on page
number
5?
6 of 16H.
By state code, you're required to be responsible for whatever you build for a year
Okay.
after it's finalized.
I think that's building this.
By building code, you're responsible for whatever you build for 1 year.
So when this says the sign company shall be relieved of further responsibility after final approval of the sign, the building code supersedes that?
The building code will supersede that because
Okay.
you have
Well,
to give.
if I may, the building code is more concerned with whether the sign has been properly
Okay,
constructed.
constructed.
So it would
Okay.
be going more to whether it's structurally sound, whether the electricity is working properly, and that kind of thing. What this is referring to is whether the sign is legal and allowed to be there to begin with. So
Okay.
the signage company, beyond getting the building permit, has no bearing to whether or not that sign is allowed to be there for a month or 3 years. According to our code, they just build it and then they move on because their job is to build it as per
And install it.
and install it, right? So they bear no responsibility beyond that, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Clarification of flags, if we can, Susanna? We discussed
Do you have a
page
particular
number
question?
7 of 16, number 6.
Number 6? Yeah.
Okay. This is what was changed the last time around,
Okay.
a couple of months ago. And it basically goes to, and in this particular section is discussing signs that are allowed without a permit. You're allowed to have a flag without having to bring in approval of a permit. And it's gotta be a flag or insignia of a government not connected with commercial promotion. Now, if you go a little bit farther down, under 11,
Right.
right? That's where we discuss other kinds of flags. Is
All right.
that-
So number 6 says flags and insignias of any government except when displayed in connection with commercial promotion.
Correct. So if you're having like, the auto dealerships are very famous for this. They
Right.
just want to put all kinds of flags.
up.
Right. That would
Or
require a
Mexican
permit.
restaurant, put the Mexican flag.
Correct. Now, the flagpole or mounting device does require a building permit, but the flag itself does not.
And then if we can talk about number 11 on page 7 of 16 regarding the political signs, because that was one of our items that we were discussing the last time. Just want to be sure.
Now, from what I understand here, you can put one up for each political person running for office that you agree with. It doesn't, you can put, so if you have 3 or 4 people, you can have 4 signs or 3 or 4 signs for each individual candidate.
Correct. So the way it reads right now, and this is what was approved by the council a few months ago, I think the second reading was in March. This allows for every individual property to have a sign for each candidate and/or position or item to be voted on for the election. And also political flags. Flags.
So it would allow for us to demonstrate a sign, or a homeowner demonstrate a sign for state, federal, county, or local government.
Correct.
Have signs.
One per issue or candidate,
Okay.
which can add up to quite a few signs.
Correct.
What this does not allow is if somebody is a very, very stout supporter or of one particular candidate, it does not allow to have repeated signs for that candidate and/or issue. They get to have one per candidate or issue.
And it's one per facing roadway, correct? So those properties that would be on a corner?
Correct, they get frontage on both sides, yes. Good question. Hold on, let me reread that.
I do have a question because it says, and I know that that in 11, we use kind of signs and flags kind of interchangeably, but where it indicates that only one political sign per candidate per street facing are permitted, does that mean someone can have a sign and a flag? Or is it or a flag per candidate?
The way it reads right now, it's you can have both. It doesn't seem like there's a limitation on flags.
Correct.
Right.
Now, the flags have to be on the flagpoles, right?
Yeah. They should. I don't know if we
No, that's not what it
discuss
says.
that later on. There's another
You
section of
can
the
have
code
a
that
flag or you
discusses.
can have a pole and then obviously put up, like, people can hang a
There's-
flag.
In our actual code itself, aside from temporary signs, there's a section that just deals with flags and how you and where you can, place a flag. If you give me a second, I can look that up for you.
And then while you're looking for that, the question about the square footage of those signs in number 11 at 40 square feet would be agreeable?
So
No,
these
it's not.
numbers would be changed
It's 22
to
inches by
match whatever
28
we
inches.
do on the other ones.
Okay.
Because all of
They're
these
all the-
signage, all temporary signs have to be treated the same. And the categories for these temporary signs are political signs, real estate signs, and construction signs. So the sizes of the signage has to be per district
Okay.
and not based on what their content is, right? So political signs have to be treated identically to real estate and construction signs at all times.
Right, so then the point being that 40 square feet is noted here, it would be changed
Correct.
based on the,
On whatever we
Right,
decide on the
okay.
other side. And
Got it.
I would retroactively go back and change this little bit as well. As a matter of fact, let me flag it so that I don't forget. 'Cause that
Okay.
would be,
Because that would
yeah.
be allowed for commercial
Right.
areas. Right.
The section of the code that discusses flagpoles is section, it's miscellaneous type of signs.
it's under temporary.
It's section 13-1904, additional requirements for signs. And if you go in that section to
We don't have it here.
you don't have it there, no.
We don't have it.
That's
No, we
why
don't have it
it's
here.
beyond the scope of what we're discussing tonight.
Right.
But just so that you know, it's G, flagpoles, and it says, flagpoles must be flown on a regular basis, or the poles must be removed. No more than 3 flagpoles will be allowed per non-residential site with corporate logos permitted, and 1 flagpole per residential site. A maximum of 2 flags shall be allowed per flagpole. If a flag is flown in conjunction with the United States flag, the U.S. flag has to be larger, yada, yada, yada. And it discusses the height. Height will be, for 1-story building, will be allowed to 15 feet in height maximum, with an additional 10 feet allowed for each additional floor, up to a maximum of 50 feet in height.
Thank you.
Was there anything else? And we'll move on to the items that Susanna had
Yep.
referenced in the beginning.
What page would you be on?
I did want to just make a notation too, on page number 13, it would be section 13-1903, 1.2 temporary signs, that it's not to exceed 10% of the total window. Would you explain that a little bit, Susanna? Is this the one where we talked about with the graphics?
Oh, the one with the
Or I have
vacant
this
stores?
confused.
The one for the vacant storefronts?
Number C, on page 13. Temporary signs, yeah, have this missed. I'm sorry, and what I wanted to confirm too, it's 2 permits, right above that one, B. There shall be a maximum of 2 permits for the same premises within 1 calendar year.
Correct. So that's one of the things that I need the board to vote on. As it reads right now, and these are
Temporary signs, right?
It's under the temporary?
is under temporary, right, and this includes real estate signs, construction signs, and/or political signs. With the caveat that political signs get to be, right, more than one, right? But there shall be a maximum of 2 permits for the same premises within 1 calendar year for signs requiring permits. That would be
Okay.
real estate and construction signs, very particularly.
Are not included in that, obviously.
Yes, those are the ones that are, the political signs do not require permits, so
Right.
they're not included. So, construction and real estate signs and/or business signs or banners, a maximum of 2 for 1 premise. So premise would be property and/or commercial property within a calendar year. Is that something that you're okay with, or would you like to make that 3, or would you like to make that 1, or would you like to eliminate that maximum?
Would they be using it for a special occasion at a restaurant or something like that? Or is just for basic construction? Because once you do construction, you normally don't come back.
Right, so the ones that are requiring permits are banners, like opening soon, Happy Cinco de Mayo, I don't know, I'm making it up.
Right.
Right? And/or construction, right? Under construction by blah, 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 or real estate for sale or lease. So there's 3 types that get wrapped in here. Are you okay with 2 per year, 1 per year, or no limit, or 3 per year?
No, the question would be that if they have 2 events and then they want to sell their business, they wouldn't be able to post a real estate sign.
You'd be limited then.
Well, I was gonna ask, so let's just say that the owner of a property put up a for sale sign, they're gonna sell, they're in the process of selling, put up a for sale sign, the property was sold within a few months, and then the next owner, so would it be specific to the property or to the owner? Because if the new owner came in, would he be allowed to also have 2 signs for the next year?
For sale.
For
So they'd be-
sale,
So they're
for
selling
sale.
again, so
Yeah,
they're flipping the
forget
property, is that what we're doing?
Yeah, the same, just assume, I mean, it's possible. It's not likely, but it's possible that,
Good questions. That's a question for the board. Yes, under this, no, they would not be allowed to. They'd be allowed to do that twice. And
So-
again, you're thinking calendar year, so.
Right, calendar year.
yeah.
So I'm thinking probably 3,
So 3
you know,
probably would
to
work.
give 3 to,
I would be okay with that.
And do realize that these are allowed to be, another question that we're gonna ask is how long are these allowed to go up? So if you're talking about, it's allowed for this for sale sign to be up for 30 calendar days, right? Then in 2 in a year, that clears up 2 months out of the year. If you're allowing these to be up for 90 days, 2 per year are actually 6 months,
Yeah.
right? So these are the little,
so I probably should be different for sale sign, because you need to have it for the whole period that you're trying to sell a property, where if you're doing an event like Cinco de Mayo or,
It's shorter,
you know, Thanksgiving's Day or,
maybe for a week or something like that.
right.
I
So
I
some-
guess
some
what
could be a
my
week.
concern is, I could see why the calendar year limitation, in other words, capping the amount that we can allow them to put up for things like real estate. But at the same time, if they meet the requirement to get the permit and you can't have more than 1 sign there up at a time, why would we limit it if they have a viable basis to have a sign? For example, if it's not a real estate, like De La Sierra had just indicated, if it's for Cinco de Mayo or Thanksgiving or an event, why can't they get more than 1 permit if they're hosting multiple events?
It's like the ice cream shop in the
Or a
shopping center
church,
next to
or a
Outback was
church.
for sale for 5 months, 5, 6 months.
Well, I think the intent would be to limit the signs that we see in the town, I guess. But I don't know if it's fair. I'm just saying that, I guess that's the intent.
I mean, if no one sign can be on for more than a certain period of time, then you control it that way. But if someone has a sign for 1 week, like a church, and I'm just kind of throwing this out there, where they're hosting different events, are they now not going to be allowed to do that, or they can only pick 2 events a year, even if they only have their sign up for a week, as opposed to others who may have it up for 90 days?
You probably should break out event signs away from real estate signs, because you can have events all throughout the year. Easter, there's being statements by Ms. Yanis.
I
So
agree.
when we get a little bit farther down, there's section 1903.1.5 banners, where, and these are particularly banners. So you gotta, right, 'cause what kind of sign are we talking about? Are we talking about a square thing with posts on it, or stickers on the window? Or are we talking about, right, different kinds of, if we're talking about banners particularly, there's a whole section for that, where only one per, right now the way it's written, and these are questions for the board, is 1 banner per calendar year, per property, maintained for a period not to exceed 14 days. The area shall not exceed 100 square feet, and it will get a zoning permit, not a building permit. And the questions to the board are, number 1, do we want 1 per calendar year? And these are banners.
Right, but we're talking banners.
Do we want them to be 14 days less or more or less, right? Is 14 days an acceptable period of time? And number 3, area 100 square feet. Is that too much? Is that too little?
Well, 100 square feet is a lot.
Yes, that's a large banner.
That's a large banner, I would say.
Right, so just
That's
keep in
2 by
mind that
50
that's
feet.
pertaining to banners, not signs. It's not
Correct.
the same thing.
Correct.
So we were discussing the sign component. We can pause sign and go back to banners, but it would seem to me that we need to
No,
address the
finish-
issue pertaining to the signs.
Yeah, finish the signs,
Right,
yeah.
so when we're
You're
talking
right.
about signs, we're talking about like posts with, pieces of cardboard with, or wood with posts on them, or maybe stickers on windows, or maybe, again, like a regular real estate sign, construction sign, stuff on, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about banners, because those are a separate consideration, right?
I know they're separate, but for me, the limitation on a calendar year as to, and again, I know they're separate, but the issue, I think, for both of them is limiting the amount of banners or signs you can use in a calendar year. One limits it to 2, one limits it to 1. And I don't know if I like limiting it to a calendar year. I think we don't want a ton of signs, but if the sign complies and it's only allowed for 90 days or the 180, whatever, you're still not going to be allowed to have an exorbitant amount of signs. And if you have a real estate sign, like Fernandez indicated, they're flipping it, and maybe they have a viable reason to have more than 2 signs in a 12-month, year. And when you're talking about a banner, you're only allowing 1 in an entire year for 14 days. I just think for both, limiting it to a calendar year wouldn't be my preference in terms of the calendar year limitation.
I have a question about, what about signs similar to what, say, McDonald's does a special on chicken McNuggets, and for 3 weeks they have a window sign, and then they take that one down, and now they do one for a Big Mac.
So that's considered advertising,
That's considered advertising, so that wouldn't be considered a sign.
and that's generally not allowed. Like, that's not part of their signage that they're allowed to have. Do they do it? Yes, they do it.
They do, so it would
Do
not
they-
be
But they're
allowed.
not really supposed to be doing that.
And that wouldn't include the coverage of 15%, I think you have on the window?
Correct. So that's what, right, so that's what that
So
would
those
go
signs are
for.
not allowed?
Right.
Okay.
Now, again, do we,
No, I don't know that we want to cite
Right.
business owners for that.
and then, and I'm gonna say, going out, now speaking a little bit for code enforcement and generally these things get cited and coded when somebody is really abusing the situation, where something is really, really bad, right? Like somebody that's putting up a small sign here and there is not gonna get cited, but if you're really, really like covering,
You don't
Am I
wanna,
right?
you don't wanna block all the glass in a business because it makes it a dangerous situation for someone to come in and do something that won't be seen from the outside by police.
and utilizing all your available glass area, window area for advertising,
It's wrong.
it's just
No, it's
not,
wrong.
it's unsightly and not, right? So that's the kind of thing that you're trying to prevent. Now, somebody putting up a small poster that says, 2 for 1 today on coffee, right? That's where we go with the sizes, and that's where we're trying to make that something that is allowed, but it's not abusable, right? So you're trying to limit the amount of abuse of that kind of situation.
But I think if we don't want something to be an eyesore, then you don't allow signs to be an eyesore. If what you're saying is you can do these things that we consider an eyesore, we can only do it twice. That's the part that I don't understand. That's the part that I guess I don't agree with. If we're gonna allow parameters to allow a sign, I just don't see how, I just think 2 and 1 is an arbitrary number. It is my point. I don't see why we'll allow it twice but not 3 times, and once but not twice. That's my issue. We're not saying we don't allow these kinds of signs. We're saying you can do these signs, you can only do it once or twice, depending on if it's a banner or a temporary sign. And that's just I would prefer not to have that limitation. They have to comply with the size and the deadlines and the time frame and the square footage that's approved under the code. But I think the frequency of 2 versus 3 versus 1 is arbitrary. That's what I'm struggling with.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is arbitrary, but I think we're deciding things that, I would disagree with you on that, board member Yanas. I think that, we do need to have some sort of limit, whatever it is, but we do need some limit.
But then what about the real estate sign, like you said?
I'm okay with having real estate signs, against maybe what some of my colleagues might think, but I do think that we need to have limits. If we didn't, so in other words, if we allowed for signs to, real estate, for sale signs to be allowed during the time that sells, our listing agreements typically say 6 months, right? And if we allow for twice a year, possibly you can have a for sale sign the entire year if we allow during the time it sells twice a year, right? You'd apply once that you listed it the one time, and that's even if you had a listing of a year, you could just leave it on the entire year, and somebody could use that as an advertisement.
And I don't disagree with you on that, but right now the code would allow that. You can have it throughout the whole year, you have 2 signs. But what if you're that person that sold their house in 30 days? And then you get the house and you get to sell it again, and maybe you have, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what about if you're not that person that had it, I agree with you that a continuous sign for a year, I wouldn't want that either, but I guess I'm looking at, like the banner, that's 14 days, one time, in 52 weeks. I guess that's what I'm looking at. I don't understand that limitation.
Yeah, single family, they would put up the sign and every once in a while, whenever they sell a home, they wouldn't be continuously putting those up. Or townhouses. Now, apartment buildings, put them up and leave them up. So the office building.
So
I know a sign
pertaining,
that's been up for 3 years.
pertaining to B, do we have a motion? Someone wants to make a change for that? I'm talking about 13.1903.1.2 B on page 13 of 16. It's where it says, there shall be a maximum of 2 permits for the same premises within 1 calendar year for signs requiring permits.
And how long would the sign be allowed, is the question.
Is there a time limit? Do we have a motion?
So these are all things that you can make a motion to change at this point. That's why we're We're sort of using this as a placeholder for,
So if you're gonna do,
or if you would choose to, if you would like to make a motion to eliminate it completely, then that's also up to you. If you want to have no limit on how many they can have, then that's, you know,
No, I thought we had a limit on the temporary signs as to how long they could be up, because, no, I don't want them to have a sign there 365 days out of the year. Thought we had a time limit on per sign.
I'm having just a little bit of a hard time hearing you.
Can you hear me better?
A little bit better, yes. Thank you.
so this would guide both residential and commercial, or only commercial? This section? There's temporary signs, general requirements, it doesn't specify any,
It doesn't specify, but we could specify.
that's what why I'm asking, because
this one is, it's
residential,
particularly right now very generic. So
Very
it's,
generic.
it's for all of them, for all residential, multifamily, and remember that we're separating into single-family, multifamily, and all other districts, which would include
Which we haven't quite gotten to
business.
yet.
I know, I'm just sort of anticipating.
Right.
Can we break up the temporary signs into like subcategories? Because I don't think all temporary signs are created equal either. Is that an option?
Well, that's why we're here. And I'm gonna let Mr. First Amendment over here explain that one.
Right.
But the real reason, that we have to do all this is to be able to treat all temporary signage identically, so that there's no difference between political speech, real estate signs, construction signs, and business signs. And that's why we're creating a text that treats them all in the same exact way, so that there's no difference. And am I explaining that correctly? And that's part of the that's part of the things that we're trying to go through, and that's why we're changing the way this text is structured, so that we don't continue to fall into those pitfalls of treating, well, if it's a real estate sign, then you can have it for 6 months, but if it's a construction sign, then you can have it for 3 weeks, and if it's
Understood.
right.
Understood.
can you categorize it as commercial and residential?
Yes.
So,
So
then
that
it-
would-
Correct, so that's how we're breaking them out. We're breaking them
Right,
out
right.
by districts and by location, and then trying to add restrictions as to time and stuff more based on the usage than based on the content of the signage.
See, with residential, I would say the two is correct, no problem. For commercial changes, because there's so many changes in a building of multi-units.
Commercial speech is not the same thing as personal speech. There's case law that kind of defines that and discusses that. What I'm concerned of is make sure that if you have a temporary sign that says Happy Easter, you're treating it kind of similarly to one that says vote for my favorite candidate, you know? Treating that as a free speech type issue. And we're not regulating the signage of one to be smaller than the signage of the other. So there we go.
So I'm coming back to B. Are you all in agreement to B, stating there shall be a maximum of 2 permits for the same premises within 1 calendar year for signs requiring permits? And if not, we need a motion to change something.
I'm okay with it. After reading it again, I'm okay with it. Because I realize that if we're gonna allow for it during the time of a sale of a home, it's gonna be extended to that amount of time anyway.
Okay.
Chairwoman Yanis, you have any further questions after his comment, or anything you'd like to add or motion?
My motion, I don't think everyone agrees with. So I guess I would motion to at least increase the number from 2 to at least 3. That would be my motion.
Do I have a second?
I would second that motion.
Any further discussion? Would you please call the roll?
Board Member Yanis,
Yes.
Board Member Fernandez,
Yes.
Board Member Leoncio,
Yes.
Board Member De La Sierra,
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Matos.
Yes, the motion passes. Thank you. And if you would please direct your attention to page number 14. And if we can look at item number D, there shall be a maximum of one temporary sign per street frontage, with the exception of election/free speech, and the item that you read to us previously. Shall not exceed one temporary sign per residential or commercial unit. Are we okay with one temporary sign per street frontage?
I am.
I am.
If it's acceptable
Yep.
to everybody, we're needing a motion on that, Susanna, or no? It was an item that you were concerned about?
If nobody
No?
makes a motion to
Okay.
change it, then that's fine.
So we're fine with that. And then also, if you would, take a look at G, H, and I. Size, single family, the sign area for single-family signs.
Can we look at E?
Yes, of course, absolutely.
The reason I want to look at E is because it says, on construction fences surrounding a construction site subject to provisions contained in design review and approval. The question is, once you put, you drape these construction banners or whatever you want to call it, the fences, so you can't see through, it changes the wind load on the fence. So there's a question of that we are allowing, similar to what's going on 154th Street at the new building, that they're putting it on the fence, and then when the wind blows, the fence starts to give way and starts to move, and it changes the wind load of the fence.
That would be a building code issue, and that would go, if they're put in the fence and the things on the fence, then that has to go through the building department, at which point we would look.
No, because we would be allowing it. And
Well,
then they-
again, whether the building code allows the wrapping of the fence or not is not something that is the zoning code's job to regulate, right? So if the building code and the building department allows the wrapping of the fence, our
Could we put
purview
something in
here-
there that it would be
our
subject to the
purview
building
here would
code
be-
approving it?
correct, so that's the exact, yes, because they do need to get a building permit for that. The only thing that we would be reviewing as the zoning code would be what graphics go in there, what language goes in
Right,
there,
right.
and what letter size and the such, right? So the
Right.
presence of the wrapping itself would be the purview of the building department. The content of the wrapping would be what we would be concerned with. So whether or not it's safe or it's something that we would let them in the building department establish.
But could you add it
and
to that number that's subject to the building department
it's not
approving the
necessary because
wrapping?
it's not our job to even decide. So even if we say, whether we say they can have it or not is still up to them. If the building department tomorrow decides that no fence shall ever have any more wrapping because it screws with it messes up their wind loads, then that's it. The conversation is all over. There is no more wrappings. If they allow the wrapping, and the only thing that we can discuss is whether or not there's anything in it other than it being green, black, or whatever color it originally is. Make sense?
No, that's okay. I just see the fences coming down in the wind.
Right, but that's not
I got
the
it. I
planning
understand
department's
you-
job.
right,
That's
right.
not planning and zoning, that's the building department's job, right? That, we separate they care about whether or not it falls out. We care about what it looks like and what it says and
Well,
where
if
it's
zoning
located. right?
zoning gives them the approval, do you believe that they would then go, or do they have to go to building?
So,
Once zoning says yes, he can put that banner up.
I have a suggestion to make, if I may. If you go to page 5 of 16, where it starts by saying interpretation, only those signs authorized by the section shall be permitted, and then section B says permits required. Perhaps in that section, permits required could be just a general statement that the the allowance of any of these signs is subject to, may be subject to building requirements.
Building requirements, that would be good.
Okay?
I'll move to whatever you just said.
Okay.
Yeah, what you said, he's
Basically
making
just,
the motion,
okay, so,
and I'll second it.
so basically my motion is just to add in the permit section that, these signs are subject to, these signs may be, may require a building permit.
A building permit,
That's your motion, Mr. Delasar?
yes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Board Member Leoncio.
Yes.
Board Member Fernandez.
Yes.
Board Member De La Sierra.
Yes.
Board Member Yanes.
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Matos.
Yes, the motion passes. And if we then, are you finished with E?
Yes, ma'am.
And if we can go on, if there's anything else, if F or anything else, if we can look at G, size, single family, the sign area for single family signs shall not exceed 4 square feet. And 4 square feet is in relation would be what, 22 by 28?
So what we have
Yeah.
been discussing right now is 22 by 28, which is roughly 4 square feet. So this is just a translation to, instead of talking about inches and very particular dimensions in one direction or the other, more to talk about a more generic, general size so that people don't have to be measuring their signs, because that's kind of, right? And that's why it's changed to 4 square feet, which is what that is.
Is there any further conversation needed on that item?
That's fine.
We're fine with that. Ms. Yanes, everyone? Excuse me. And then if we can then look at H, size multifamily, the sign area for a multifamily zoning district shall not exceed 16 square feet.
Notice that this one would be a reduction. As of right now, multifamily areas are allowed 40 square feet. So this would be an effective reduction of what they're allowed right now.
I'm good with that.
And 40 square feet would be,
About the size of a door,
That would be for I,
right?
you mean, moving on to I?
moving on.
Okay.
Size, all other districts, the sign area for all other districts shall not exceed 1 square foot per 3 linear feet of street frontage, not to exceed. We already addressed the fact that it's not 75, but
40.
40.
40.
And so then we're looking at incremental numbers?
Correct. So this one, the two things that you need to discuss on I is whether you wish to have it incremental, so, or either 40 square feet for everybody, or whether a larger lot would get 40 square feet and a smaller lot maybe gets less than 40 square feet. And
Based on
that's the question that is posed to you at this point.
the linear. We have any discussion on that? Any comments? Ms. Yanis, everybody's accepting
40 square feet across the board.
40 square feet across the board?
40 square feet across the board, instead of the lineal footage thing?
I'm okay with that. I think that,
That's the size of a sheet of plywood,
that
4
that's
by
not,
8.
that's not too overbearing.
That's fine with me.
So to leave it as it is?
If it change that 40 in.
It's a say shall not exceed 40 square feet.
Shall not?
Right.
Okay, I need a motion for that, to correct it.
Make a motion that shall not exceed 40 square feet.
Second.
I do need if you want to strike out the 1 square foot per 3 linears.
And strike out the 1
that
per
you need
square
to like
foot.
make a motion for that, please.
Yeah, make a motion to strike out the 1 square foot for every 3 lineal square feet and limit it to 40 square feet only.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Would you call the roll on that, please?
Board Member De La Sierra.
Yes.
Board Member Fernandez.
Yes.
Board Member Yanes.
Yes.
Board Member Leoncio.
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Matos.
Yes, the motion passes, thank you. And moving on if there's nothing else on page number 14, if we can take a look at 15, please. Banners, 1903.1.5 balloon signs. And number B, or letter B, I'm sorry, 1 temporary banner per calendar year per property may be erected and maintained for a period not to exceed 14 days. And then B1 says area shall not exceed 100 square feet. 100 square feet would be,
2 by 50?
right, so in relation to a banner being 50 feet,
Right, so that if you go by the doors, you know, like 2 doors. So if you put 2 doors back to back, that's about 100 square feet, more or less, right?
Well,
Right, and it would be a banner, so most likely it's gonna be long and skinny. Most
right,
banners are
those are 2
usually,
feet,
right, some 2 to 3 feet wide and then
30 inches
however
by
long,
whatever.
yeah.
is there any conversation about 1 temporary banner
Okay,
per
so that would
calendar
be the
year
banner
per property?
From there to the top, basically.
So that would be grand opening coming soon type of thing, for a period not to exceed 14 days.
I mean, I think that's 1/26 of a year. You know, I think, I mean, it's a banner that's only allowed for 14 days. I believe 1 is extremely limiting. I don't know what the number is, but I think, I like that it's only for 14 days, but grand opening, Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving, we're basically telling them to pick 1 for 14 days and that's it.
Discussion?
I'm okay if, I mean, I think, I understand that it's a little limiting. So would you be open to 2? I mean, would the rest of the board members be open to 2 per year, or is that still too little?
I mean, I don't really know what the right answer is, that's why I kind of am okay with discussing it. I just think that it is very limiting at 1, because they are only allowed to have it for 14 days. And again, when you look at it in an entire calendar year, that's really limiting in my opinion. But I'm open to it. Anything else anybody else would suggest?
So if it's left as it is, it's 1 banner per calendar year, per property. If we're not okay with 1 per property per calendar year, then we need a motion or discussion on what that number would be. Or it remains 1 per property.
For discussion's sake, I'm gonna move to change it to 2 per calendar year at 14 days per permit.
And then the area, the square footage.
I'd like to see that go down to like 80 maybe. That's a 2 by 40 feet.
I agree with that.
If we make those changes, it has to be 2 motions, correct?
You can do it all at once. You
Do
can do it
what?
all in one motion if everybody goes.
I'll amend the motion to allow for 2 permits per calendar year, 14 days each, with a maximum sign size of 80 square feet.
If I can make a friendly amendment not to exceed 14 days?
Not to exceed 14 days.
Do I have a second?
I'll make a second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah,
Would you call
I
the
would
roll,
like a
please?
discussion. I guess who typically are the ones that apply for banners? Because if we're allowing temporary signs that could be there for extended periods of times at 3, I don't agree with 2 for a 14-day sign. Who typically, I don't know if you know offhand, Susanna, and I apologize for that question, but who typically applies for these banners?
It's mostly businesses that are either opening soon, like you said before, churches that may have an event, and generally mostly restaurants. Y- that kind of stuff. You know, Happy Cinco de Mayo, opening soon, new ownership, that kind of.
St. Patrick's Day.
St.
Yeah,
Patrick's Day, yeah.
A carnival, like if they're announcing a carnival.
There's also a new thing that started appearing during COVID, which was single-family people or single residential people
Vacations and
that
stuff.
would do like a graduation banner, which were very difficult at the time because they were not allowed. So this would allow for those graduation banners to happen for 14 days. They just get a piece of paper that gets stamped that says, yes, you're okay. Bye-bye, you can have your graduation banner or your happy birthday banner or whatever. So yes, that's the new COVID, new happening thing.
So when we talk about thinking on a single-family home, so if I had children graduating, one in December, one in June, and then it was my 25th wedding anniversary, and I wanted to celebrate Santa Claus coming to town, that would not be allowed, right? So, okay.
It would be allowed under this.
It's not allowed, right? So,
It would be
Well,
allowed
it's
now.
not allowed right now.
it's not allowed right now,
Technically, not really.
right?
Technically is unaddressed and therefore is technically not allowed. Am I right? So that's a problem
But
that
it's
we've
been
had
going
through
on.
COVID. This would at least allow it, and again, the number per year is up to the board, is up to you. This is where you suggest, right? This is a framework of words that you can fill in details for, and that's what it's meant to be.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I think that the people who would abuse, for lack of a better word, are going to be, like schools or churches or things like that. I think a restaurant's opening, they're only gonna do a grand opening once, hopefully. Homes, they're not gonna want a banner there, but I think you're telling a lot of businesses, like a church, or like a carnival announcement, or like a special event, that they're only allowed to announce things twice.
So
And-
generally, abuse of this kind of thing, abuse of the banner thing is usually a business that doesn't want to pay for a permanent sign. And what they want to do is basically ride the banner because it's cheap signage, is something that you can do for a few dollars, and it's nice and loud, and it gets a lot of visibility, and they want to ride that as long as possible. That's why limiting the time of it is important, so that they do get an opportunity to announce what they need to announce, but they're not using it as permanent signage, and or that they're not using it to over signage their business or their property, and that's how that gets abused.
Can you limit it to 2 in a 6-month period?
Or site.
That way they're sparsed out
Or
enough,
site
like
visits.
2 in a 6-month period and 14 days, and that
Sure.
way someone has the
Sure.
opportunity
We
to
can
have
do
an
anything
entire
you'd like.
calendar year, but in a 6-month time period, at best case, they're only using 30 days.
Sure. If you make a motion and the board approves it, that's definitely doable.
We have a motion on the table, we don't?
Yeah, we have a motion, but she can do
A friendly
a
amendment
friendly
to the
amendment, they
motion?
call it.
To the motion's amendment?
You wanna amend the motion?
I would amend the motion to suggest 2 within a 6-month time period, and, 2 temporary banners per 6 months per property may be erected and maintained for a period not to exceed 14 days. And I would also indicate that the area should not exceed 80 square feet.
Is there a second?
I will second.
We call the roll?
Board Member Yanes,
Yes.
Board Member Fernandez,
Yes.
Board Member Leoncio,
Yes.
Board Member De La Sierra,
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Matos.
Yes, the motion passes.
I have a question here, and it would be, with reference to the storefronts and covering up the storefronts.
We discussed that, I discussed that with Ms. Alonso today, so please, yes.
Right, well, it has to do with, what you can see from from the right-of-way, but in some shopping centers, the right-of-way is really far away. So, so I would say what you can see within the parking lot, instead of just from right-of-ways or parking lots, either
Where
one.
are you?
I'm here in C,
So is,
vacant storefronts, 13190316, item C.
Okay, so he is using the restroom, so we are breaking quorum, so we would have to stop. I'm making a motion.
we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Thank you.
No.
But I told him to go, and then he realized we were breaking quorum.
It starts out, it seemed like it was so late, and then all of a sudden now it starts, right? Was it, yeah, I mean, just, but all of a sudden.
He needed to be at a bar mitzvah at 7:30.
Seven.
JC. Yeah. No, we're almost done.
I have offers coming in, I'm supposed to be there.
Remove visible from the public right away, that would be great. Just, you can put just visible. Yeah. Just put visible.
Bean and Mr. Della Sera.
Yeah, on being visible from the right of way, I would like to just change it to being visible by the public, so that it works at any shopping center.
Would you state where you are and the change, please?
I'm at, section 13-1903.1.6C. Line 2, where it says storefronts that face the public right of way, change that storefronts that face, storefronts that are visible by the public.
Do we need a motion for that?
Suzanne? Do we need a motion for
Do we
that?
need a motion for that?
I don't think so, no. It's just
Okay,
words
correction.
changes. You're fine. Yeah.
We went through a lot. This is a still very in-depth analysis of the sign ordinance. Do we have anything else? Is there anything that you want to talk about within this? Anything else we need to discuss?
Can I ask a question on election headquarters signs? This says that you can have, let's see how many it was.
Suzanne and I were thinking of maybe just getting rid of that section altogether.
Yeah, I don't think we need that.
Election headquarters signs? Yeah. Why do we need that?
We don't.
Yeah,
We can just take it out.
great. So I didn't feel like it made sense.
We have to vote on that? Gonna just take it out?
It's done.
Do we have any reports, anything to, Ms. Alonso, anything else that you need?
Well, this will be going to town council next week. I can,
It may or may not go to town council.
So the question that
we
I
gotta
have
talk about that tomorrow morning, but
pertaining to that, obviously, there were certain pieces that we clearly worked very diligently on over a period of time. Is and those were things that we had talked about at the last meeting. And so if this will not come back to us again at this juncture on what we did, if it goes to the council, would you explain that just a little bit?
I mean, it can. It can come back to you with what the council decided, and if you guys have some extra thoughts, you can give.
It would come back to you if the council made changes that made this significantly different than what it is right now. And at that time, it would come back to you for reconsideration. However, do realize that we're not finished with signage, that this is just the temporary signage portion of it. There will be more consideration to other parts of the signage code. We're just going through it like most urgent first, and then taking care of the really bad parts and moving on to the not so horrible parts little by little.
Okay,
But there will be more signage coming your way.
and
So
that's where I was
continue to
going.
think about signage, continue to give this thought, and to walk around and see how things are and what works and what doesn't, because more will be coming your way, for sure.
And mostly this is because of the First Amendment.
It's, yes, but it's just code compliance. I'll be frank. Our code compliance department, our planning department, or even say building department have had challenges in how to regulate and enforce these provisions. We've discussed that up here with regards to some of these massive signs that we see here, and then there's no zoning permits that are pulled, and so they're perpetuating all over the town. We've had issues with regards to houses with multiple flags all over the place, and we don't have really the way that the code is structured doesn't really give a lot of clarity as to what is allowed and what's not allowed. So this, August board has been designated and tasked with helping us kind of figure out how to fix this so that we have better regulation. So that's why we're doing it. It's been, and again, to be very, very frank, it's one of those issues that since I've been in the town, it's been talked, well, we're gonna touch it, we're gonna tackle it, and then all of a sudden it's too big. Let's not deal with it right now. And finally, we've decided, thanks to Ms. Alonso, she's like, no, Lorenzo, let's tackle it, let's do it, so.
Yeah, I would like to thank you for the work on both your parts, and thank you for the confidence in having us help.
Thank you guys, because you have done a marvelous, you've had a wonderful discussion, very in-depth, really wise, very very savvy, and this is going to the council much stronger than anything we have on paper right now. This is giving them a really nice solid basis of what the community wants at the end of the day, because it's kind of blinding. You realize how difficult it is to decide 80 square feet, 100 square feet, what's appropriate, what works, what doesn't. It's hard for them to decide what's appropriate, right, and what works, and all these granular details that are really, like you were saying before, they're really, you could go either way. You could really do it this way or that way, and it would work both ways, but what do? You need to pick one, right? So it helps for them to see your opinion on these issues, and for them to be able to go with a much better sense of what professionals like you see that works out there in the community. So you're giving them a gift in that this is at least now hashed out and discussed very well, and they can go on your opinion, and this is great for them. So I thank you I thank you for me, and I thank you for them on their behalf. Yes.
Great job, everybody, and thank you for your patience. I appreciate each of you, as always, and never more than when you're chairing this meeting. You're so amazing, all of you. Thank you so much. And
You did a great job.
do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all
Second.
those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You did a great job, girl.